Minister Shanmugam addresses two separate hot-button issues in Parliament today, Section 377A and the death penalty. While Mr. Balakrishnan tells the House that 3 Singaporeans have been evacuated from Ukraine, leaving 6 still in the country. And an infectious diseases expert tells us if we're coming down from our Omicron peak. You're watching The Big Story. I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you don't miss a single episode. Two sensitive issues addressed by Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam in Parliament today. First, Section 377A of the Penal Code, criminalising sex between men, but which the government has said will not be proactively enforced. In a judgment released this week, the Court of Appeal had ruled that the law will stay on the books but cannot be used to prosecute men for having gay sex. And Mr. Shanmugam says today that the government is considering the best way forward on Section 377A that will respect different viewpoints.
LGBT plus individuals are entitled to live peacefully without being attacked or threatened. Since this issue was last discussed in Parliament in 2007, social attitudes towards homosexuality have gradually shifted. One of the things that upsets the LGBT plus community is that many feel that their experience of being hurt or rejected by their families, friends, schools, and companies is not recognized, indeed often denied. At the same time, a large majority want to preserve the overall tone of our society, in particular the traditional view of marriage as being between a man and a woman, and that children should be raised within such a family structure. Their concern is not Section 377A per se, but the broader issues of marriage and family. Many amongst this group also support decriminalizing homosexual sex between men. Both these viewpoints are valid and important. Policies need to evolve to keep abreast of such changes in views. And legislation needs to evolve to support updated policies. The government is considering the best way forward. We must respect the different viewpoints, consider them carefully, talk to the different groups, and if and when we decide to move, we will do so in a way that continues to balance between these different viewpoints and avoids causing a sudden destabilizing change in social norms and public expectations.
The second issue Mr. Shanmugam speaks about, the death penalty, which punishes offenders of serious crimes like drug trafficking, murder and use of firearms. Mr. Shanmugam elaborates on why the government's approach to the death penalty remains relevant in Singapore by listing these 5 considerations. First, the deterrent effect. In a 2021 survey by MHA of persons from the region where most arrested drug traffickers originated from, 83% believe the death penalty is a deterrent. Second, the death penalty's effect on the behavior of drug traffickers. Third, most Singapore residents support the use of the death penalty and agree that it deters serious crimes. And fourth, drug trafficking and its wider harms on society. And lastly, on outcomes, Mr. Shanmugam says the death penalty has kept low numbers for serious crimes.
Now let me turn to outcomes in Singapore. Mr. Murali Pillai asked whether there was a worsening of the drug situation. My answer is the number of drug abusers in Singapore remains low, though there are some worrying trends. The number of new drug abusers is higher than we would like it to be. I had earlier shared how the number of abusers arrested in Singapore has, over the years, gone down, and how that is also linked to low crime. Drugs are not the sole cause of murders, violence, or crime. And when we look at the overseas examples, a variety of other factors shape safety in cities, including the availability of guns, how effective the criminal justice system and the police are, and many other factors. But in my view, drug abuse and the prevalence of drug gangs is an important contributing factor, and it links up to quite a lot of other factors. So by being tough on drug offenses, we minimize the harm of drugs in our society. If we removed the DP, I have no doubt more drug syndicates and traffickers will bring larger amounts of drugs into Singapore, and Singaporeans and their families will suffer. We prefer not to have to impose a death penalty on anyone, but we have to continue to do what is best for us as a matter of policy.
Foreign Affairs Minister Vivian Balakrishnan says our government has evacuated 3 Singaporeans from Ukraine, with 6 still there. Following Monday's ministerial statement on Ukraine when he called Russia's invasion a clear and gross violation, Dr. Balakrishnan reiterates why Singapore must take a stand against actions that violate sovereignty, political independence and the territorial integrity of another country, because it ultimately also about Singapore as a tiny city-state.
When push comes to shove, smaller countries like Singapore must be prepared to defend ourselves and not get caught up in the geopolitical games of big powers. We do not take sides, but we do take a stand to uphold existential principles. We make common cause with our neighbors and our friends within ASEAN and in the UN General Assembly to the maximum extent possible.
This time last week, we saw the start of the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine, and as the attacks continue, more and more civilians are getting caught in the crossfire. According to the United Nations Human Rights Office, 227 civilians were killed in the first 5 days of the invasion, including 15 under 18 years old. Another 525 were injured. The organization says it believes the true death toll is considerably higher due to reporting delays. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry says 498 of its soldiers have died and another 1,597 wounded since the invasion started a week ago. This is the first time that Moscow put a figure on its casualties. Ukraine, however, says more than 7,000 Russian soldiers were killed so far and hundreds taken prisoner. The figures could not be independently verified. And separately, the UN's refugee agency reveals that in just 7 days of the invasion, 1 million refugees have fled to neighboring countries, with Poland receiving more than half of that figure. Other countries that refugees are fleeing to include Romania, Hungary and Slovakia. With the first round of ceasefire talks making little progress, Ukrainian and Russian delegates are meeting once again on Thursday, this time on the Belarus-Poland border. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia must stop bombing if it wants to negotiate. Moving on, according to Senior Minister of State for Health Daniel Putticherry in Parliament today, Trace Together and Safe Entry still play important roles in Singapore's COVID-19 response and will continue to be used at least until vaccination differentiated measures are no longer needed. He was responding to a question by alternate GRC MP Leon Pereira, who had noted that the enforcement of these check-ins come with compliance burdens for businesses and asked when the Health Ministry would phase them out.
The ability to issue health risk warnings and notices very quickly in the face of a rapidly progressing epidemic or pandemic is an important public health measure. These have managed to keep our case fatality rate low as we've slowed the spread and allowed people to self-isolate and seek help very early on in the illness. The contact tracing approach that we've taken in Singapore may have saved about 290 deaths and slowed down the progression to avoid about 144,000 cases. And I hope the member will agree that these are useful outcomes. When will we no longer need such an approach, and when will we phase out what the criteria may be? It's a bit too early to tell. We need to wait until we no longer need vaccine differentiated measures. We need to wait until we're quite sure that the pandemic and COVID-19 is no longer epidemic, but is endemic. And we have not reached that point yet. It's very hard to say with some degree of certainty what that date will be.
The weekly infection growth rate dipped to 0.98 yesterday, the first time it's below 1 since January the 3rd. The rate refers to the ratio of community cases for the past week over the week before, and a figure of more than 1 shows new weekly cases are increasing. Well, this comes as 19,159 new cases were reported last night. Aside from the 160 imported infections, the rest were local. Among those, over 16,300 were detected through ART, meaning they were assessed by a doctor to have mild symptoms. About 2,600 were detected through PCR tests. Infectious diseases specialist Dr. Leong Hoe Nam from the Rophi Clinic joins me now. Dr. Leong, it's been a while since we've had you on. It is the first time we're checking in since our infection numbers started climbing because of the Omicron wave. So Dr. Leong, how is your clinic managing the surge?
We do see COVID patients at the emergency department, and I can tell you the wave, it is just unprecedented. So many people falling sick, and we can barely cope. Let's be honest here, we can barely cope. Now, all this is done in emergency department, and emergency doctors have been fabulous in holding the fort. Now, if you do have a cough, runny nose, and sore throat, there's a 99% chance that you're going to end up with COVID-19. Even if you think it's just tonsillitis, but there could be COVID-19 with tonsillitis. And if you were to do the testing, 90% of them will be positive, and that's very typical. Now, the problem which we have now is that with so many people going into the emergency department, those who require treatment get sidelined. And many people are requesting for hospitalization when you don't need them. Case in point, I have a young girl who actually came to me yesterday, and she has had fever for 3 weeks. She has problems getting herself admitted to the hospital. Now, I could diagnose quickly that she has an infection of the heart, which is a life-threatening and dangerous condition. Eventually managed to get her a bed, and she's getting treatment now. But you can imagine your loved ones may not get treatment simply because there are no beds in the hospital. So everyone, if you don't need hospitalization, don't come into the hospital. And if you're well enough, go home earlier so that it can make space for the others.
Well, Dr. Leong, there is a little bit of good news. The weekly infection growth rate was below 1 yesterday, and this is, of course, the figure for a single day, but could it be the first sign of Singapore coming down from our Omicron peak?
I think so. I don't want to count the chickens before they are hatched, but certainly it is a positive news. We might have started peaking this week, but let's be sure. We'll wait for about another 2 weeks. If the numbers are stabilizing there or it is starting to turn around, then in that case, we will be very positive. With my own back of the envelope calculation, I expect the numbers to start falling by middle of March. So that's coming up quite soon. So yes, I think I'm positive. I think we are hitting the peak, but we need the figures from next week as well as this week to be certain that the worst is over.
Well, fingers crossed that your forecast is right. Dr. Leong Hoe Nam there, infectious diseases specialist from the Rophi Clinic. Meanwhile, a World Health Organization panel has backed the use of Merck's COVID-19 antiviral pill molnupiravir, specifically for high-risk patients with non-severe disease like the unvaccinated, immunocompromised, older people and those with chronic diseases. Separately, the panel is also preparing recommendations for Pfizer's antiviral pill Paxlovid. Back home, a 25-year-old Anusman died yesterday after collapsing while participating in a health promotion board's quick hit session as part of the NS Fit program. He was immediately attended to by trainers from HPB's external vendor who administered CPR and AED on him. He was later taken to National University Hospital by ambulance and was pronounced dead there. Meanwhile, all HPB quick hit sessions will be suspended until Sunday, with investigations underway and safety practices being reviewed. The Istana Heritage Gallery reopens today, showcasing the Istana's collection of state gifts of over 1,000 items. They symbolize diplomacy, recall meetings with foreign leaders, and reveal distinctive traits of their country of origin. And to coincide with this, the Straits Times and the President's Office have launched a multimedia project that allows the public to become familiar with these gifts that Singapore has received. Visit the link below to experience 7 of them up close in 3D through augmented reality. The weekend is almost here, and what better way to spend it than checking out some great food spots? The 4th episode of ST's Food in the Hood series explores the south of Singapore. And here to give us a sneak peek is ST Food online editor Heidi Koo. So Heidi, I understand you picked just 20 of the best eateries for this one, but of course you had to try so much more to whittle down that list. Was there anyone in particular that stood out for you?
Yes, there were quite a number, but one of them is Lee Seng Nasi Lemak at Amoy Street Food Centre. It's at 7 Maxwell Road, and it's on the 2nd floor of the food centre. And it's really worth going down there early because the coconut rice of this nasi lemak here is made using fresh coconut milk, which the stall owner has been doing so for the last 30 years. So it's really absolutely fragrant, very delicious. And he uses good quality Thai jasmine rice, so you can just taste almost every single individual grain. I love it. And my standard order is usually with the ikan bilis, which is made in-house. What I really like about this stall is that he does almost everything in-house, from the chicken wings to the sambal tumis. And the sambal tumis is really, it has this crunch because his secret is to put some of the fried chicken batter in it. And talking about fried chicken, the chicken wing is really good because he marinates them from 3 a.m. in the morning, and then he'll fry them 3 hours later, and he fries them in small batches. So they are always fresh, hot, crispy, if you get there at the right time. And yeah, and you can really, about the rice again, you can really smell the pandan leaves in it. So really worth going down to Amoy Street Food Centre for this lovely nasi lemak.
I do love nasi lemak, especially with chicken wing. I know some people prefer the fish, but I definitely like chicken to go along with it. I also like desserts, Heidi. So do you have any recommendations that will satisfy people like me, with a sweet tooth in that south part of Singapore?
Okay, you can head to Beauty World Plaza in Bukit Timah to this really quirky little cafe called Shan & Co. Cafe Antiques. They make their own cheesecakes there, and I strongly recommend you try the lemon pistachio cheesecake as well as the signature chocolate cheesecake. Now, for the lemon pistachio cheesecake, what I really like about the cheesecakes here are that the filling and the base are so firmly welded together. You can slice them comfortably with your fork without, the cake just falling apart or separating from the base. So for the lemon pistachio, you have pistachio crush, pistachio in the base, the biscuit base, and then you get this really creamy, tangy, moist cream cheese filling, more lemon peel on top together with chopped cranberries and more of the crushed pistachio. Really good to bite into. It's not really sophisticated looking compared to some of those confections from branded confectionaries, but it has that homemade taste and really good to eat. And you should also try the signature chocolate cheesecake. This one is really laborious to make because it has like 5 layers. You've got an Oreo cookie layer at the bottom, and then 3 different layers of chocolate cream cheese in varying shades of chocolate. And then you've got chocolate ganache sprinkled with cocoa powder. And really good. You have to try it for yourself to know how good it is.
Fantastic. You have hit two of my weak spots when it comes to food, nasi lemak and cheesecake. Thanks so much, Hedy. That was Hedy Koo, ST Food online editor. Hedy's episode of Food in the Hood drops this Sunday, March the 6th. It's the 4th in the series, and you can watch our previous 3 episodes on our YouTube channel that cover the best food in Singapore's north, east and west. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. Thanks so much for watching The Big Story, and I'll see you tomorrow.